Hi, I'm Alys Mendus. I'm a teacher in the UK, but I'm currently doing a PhD looking at alternate education. And I've worked a lot in Steiner Waldorf and forest schools over the sort of last 6, 7, 8 years. What would you like to know about them?
I think we can start maybe with the forest schools because I don't know much about them. So if you could give us like short overview about the philosophy first.
Yep. Well, forest schools approach came to the UK, particularly from Scandinavia, where children had been in kindergartens, because they stay in kindergarten a lot longer than they do in the UK, up to about 6 or 7, all year round, out in the woodlands. And the big key focus was play and real work out in the woodlands, so either around the snow and in the mud, and it's all about wearing appropriate clothing, but being able to play and really explore and learn and climb trees and take risks and really be themselves. And then in the UK, it's come across and it's been brought into early years education, so mostly in nursery education and primary education in the UK. But I've worked a lot with 3- and 4-year-olds using forest schools and with home ed families, and it's different because it's got to fit the government's rules in the UK, but it's quite beautiful, letting play, a lot of crafts, letting children use tools, have fire, and do things which are not allowed so much in the playground, like climbing trees still, and being able to help build and make crafts outside in the woodlands. It's beautifully based on play still.
Is it somehow linked to the Scout and organization?
It isn't. No, it's quite different to that. There is something in the UK called the forest schools, which is a bit different. It's where forest schools camps, which are amazing free play and exploring the woodlands, and a lot of camp-based learning, where children have a lot of freedom in the woods. But that's very different to forest schools, which is still quite organised and still quite a lot of rules on safety because of health and safety rules, where forest schools camps seem to be quite amazing, and people who've grown up doing forest schools camps are quite wonderful people, quite grounded in nature and understanding, and very good at community building and supporting. That's something slightly different, alternate education, but so there is a difference between the two. And Scouts, again, is very traditional and very much connected to almost the military, so much more order and uniform. Yeah, it's quite different.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So the basic elements like the forest schools would be really like getting in touch with nature.
Getting in touch with nature, and the idea is it's longitudinal, so it's over a series of time, so they don't just go to a one-off session, they're going over a series of weeks, hopefully over a year. And it's worked also not just with young children, but children who are at risk, children who have challenges with going to school, really finding their own peace, children with disabilities. It's very inclusive because it lets children learn at their own pace and very much more personalised learning. And there's often a lot more adults around as well to support what's going on. And experts as well, not just teachers, youth workers, or special forest school leaders themselves who've done the training.
So that was,
yeah, sorry.
That was like my next question, like how like the teachers or the practice actually, like how they lead or don't lead, or let kids more play, or how is it conducted, basically?
Yeah, well, there has to be safety. So it depends on the ethos, maybe, of the person who's leading the session, but it is influenced by work like people like Froebel in play. And so there is often a lot of rhythm, but there is that safety within the rhythm. So it depends on who's running it, but often they come together. There might be a safety talk or a game to work out the boundaries of the area. And then there might be a tool talk for the safety of using a tool, but there might be also a lot of free play. There might be a theme for the session. So if it's in the autumn, it might be a story about a squirrel that needs to collect its nuts, and then they might make houses for the squirrels, or they might be lots of little things that are brought in. Some forest school leaders are more mainstream than others. For example, if you're working in forest schools in early years in the UK, you often have to be qualified in early years as well, or there needs to be somebody who's a specialist. So there's lots of things where you might need to change the practice to meet to compromise to meet what the government's after as well. But if people who do it as a youth club and Saturday clubs, they've got a lot more freedom to be very creative. And it does depend. Some teachers, well, some people who run forest schools like to teach skills, core skills, and other people like to, the skills come in the craft. If somebody's making a wooden stool or something else, it grows. It's quite varied.
So it basically depends on the skills of the person who leads or who starts the school or takes care of the group.
Yeah,
and also the settings.
Yeah, everyone, there is a forest school qualification that people take, and that does have sort of base level of using tools and being safe with fire. But it does depend. Some people are real bushcraft experts, so they'll bring all their bushcraft skills. Other people might be into wide games and lots of youth work, and other people might be more specialised in working with early years. So when I've done it, because I love storytelling and I've got a Steiner background, we do a lot of storytelling in nature. So it really, you bring yourself to it. And some people are, well, there is a forest school network now where they do like to keep an eye on how everybody is doing it, but there's still a lot of freedom within it. And the idea, I mean, I've visited schools, forest schools around the world. When I was in America, there was a nursery that I visited in Massachusetts, and it was just amazing. They were out in the snow with the children, and it really shows like the idea of coming from Scandinavia that you don't have to be inside. I mean, it's lovely to have a warm place with a fire. So some places might have a yurt or a green building of some sort, but it's for the coldest times. But they want to be outside as much as possible. And there is reverence for nature, so there's sort of that element of spirituality within it, of watching the seasons as they change, and maybe having their own harvest festival or new bulbs coming up, just something that's brought up within the group. So there is a lot more democracy in the learning environment, because although the teacher might start with an idea, or the teacher's maybe the wrong word, the person who's running the session, the children then have got, or young people, the control of how they're going to take that. There's also quite a lot of reverence for nature and spending time just being. And so some people are really looking at listening to the birds or finding a quiet place, a sit spot that's come across from another type of education that's inspired from the States. So I'm just looking at that. So there's lots of freedom. Sometimes it can be a bit strict, but there is a lot of scope for freedom within it.
But in general, it's focused like on the nature and the skills we can use like in the nature. So it's more like kind of like extracurricular, not school as such.
It depends. In early years with young children, the under fives, it could be 1 day a week. So it could actually be part of the school curriculum. And I did an early years qualification a couple of years ago where I proved that you could meet all the early years curriculum outdoors. And we did an assessment to show that you could do it. But you have to be quite brave to want to think outside the box. So it's often an after school club or weekends or something people might do in the summer holiday. So it's it isn't directly in the curriculum unless it might be brought in if somebody's at risk and they think that they're not fitting into mainstream schools. But it isn't in except there are some schools that are starting now that are wanting to bring it in. New ideas, but not in the UK yet, that I've come across.
It was more in States, or where have you come across that?
I visited a school in Asheville in North Carolina where they were having it all outside. They did have a yurt that they used as well, but it was really this nature-based learning. And it's something called coyote mentoring. I'm trying to work out who was the teacher behind it, but it was it's a great way of looking at being present in nature as well and learning from nature. And it came from a lot of Native American traditions of really respecting where you are and listening and being present a lot more. Yeah.
Okay, I think for the forest skills, like the introduction, that could be, do you want to add anything more? Like about your experience?
It's Tom Brown and John Young. They're the people with the coyote mentoring. Yeah. With my experiences, I've run groups with families, with home ed families, and that's been really quite wonderful to be able to celebrate nature. And then I set up and ran my friend's nursery forest school sessions with 3 and 4 year olds. And it's quite wonderful to know that children can be outside all year round. And it's the freedom that it gives them, but it does take time and to build the confidence of parents. We had a lot of parent volunteers and parent days that parents could come along as well, because it is about getting the whole community on side, because people, if they think it's a bit strange and unusual, it's making them realise how wonderful, and actually people harking back to their childhoods when they were able to play outside a lot more, and grandparents where they could play and they went out all day and came back for their tea. And that's when people get on side and realise how amazing it is. Yeah. So it's really powerful, and I love being in nature and able to share that. But also what's quite wonderful is to step back, and because again, from the Steiner stuff, is to observe the children. That's another thing about forest school, which I think is very powerful in the training, is child observation. So actually watching children in their play and looking at how we can scaffold and support them, but also give them the freedom to learn themselves and to make certain mistakes. Some things about forest schools, they have to be very safe, and sometimes because of health and safety, it can be a bit more stilted. So it's when it can flow more, it's really quite powerful. So exploring that. I did go to Norway and visit some forest, well, not some forest school, it was sort of outdoor learning in Norway. And the children were using saws and jumping off this big rock that was about over 3 meters high. And I said to the teachers, do people get hurt? And they're like, sometimes, but they learn. And it was quite wonderful, the contrast to the UK, where people panic so much and it's not allowed because of health and safety still. So freedom will be great.